You can see that old Fritz made it out here to the shop. It was a very nice drive. Actually, the car ran quite well, had some funny shifting things going on with the transmission, but it had good power. And in the midst of all the rain and wind, I was able to get out here, roll it in, and now I'm in a dry, warm shop. And I can continue to pursue what might be going on with this engine. You know, it's not at 100% yet. I need to let you know that. But the things I did back at the house were enough quick fixes to get the car running smoothly with good power so I could drive it the distance from home out here. So I want to show you what I did. I'm sorry, I should have filmed this. It would have been a good video, but some of these things I did in the dark. When we picked up the car, it was dark and raining. It probably would have been a real fun video to film this thing trying to get home, because I'd come up and if I let the foot off the gas, it'd quit. And I couldn't get any power to even go anywhere unless I was in low gear. So it took me quite a while to get home. We needed to get that car somewhere where I could take a closer look at it. When I got home, I started looking things over. I've seen this so many times on these cars. These old gasoline Mercedes that have sat for a long time, or maybe they've just been started and moved around a parking lot and they just really haven't gotten out, been driven hard, let's say 3+ months. Almost invariably, the spark plugs are going to be fouled. I mean, I've seen this so many times. I've actually had these old cars where they wouldn't start, and it was just the spark plugs. They were so badly oiled up and fouled. And sure enough, before I did anything else, I said, hey, just from my own experience, I'm going to change the spark plugs. And I pulled these out, and they're absolutely filthy. You can take a close look at these, how much carbon and oil soot was on these plugs. And as soon as I put the new plugs in, it started right up, and it ran about 50% better, but it wasn't quite there yet. So let me now show you the other things I had to do before I left home. The next thing I did was to remove that air filter housing and take a good look into this area. What I'm looking for are any vacuum leaks or any fuel leaks in the fuel injection system. You've got some main vacuum feeds coming off the intake manifold here. If those are loose, it can raise havoc with how an engine runs. This one was okay. We've got one down right in here. But as I looked more closely, I went over to the distributor, and sure enough, this one right here, going into the advanced mechanism, was completely off. So there was an intake leak, and there was something also affecting the performance of the distributor. And then I took a look and made sure all the throttle linkage was working properly, and looking particularly for any type of fuel leaks. You know, here's another vacuum fitting here. This breather hose was broken off here, but that's not really critical as to how this engine was running. So after looking at this, I thought, okay, I found one obvious thing. Next thing I'm going to go after is pull the distributor cap. Once again, I've seen this so many times on engines that don't run very well. It looks like the distributor cap's been on there 100 years. So I pull this off, and right away I could see some marks inside, some scratch marks on those pins. And when I checked it, you could see that this had been installed kind of a little off. It was slightly off a little bit. When somebody tightened this back down, the cap was cocked. So I went ahead and cleaned the contact points, cleaned the rotor, put this back on, and then went on to the next thing. Next, I went after the CIS fuel injection system. What I'm going to show you here, you got to remember I only do this on these older mechanical fuel injected cars, but I've seen this problem a lot. So I wanted to clean the throttle body and the intake plenum. And a lot of times this flapper valve will be all gummed up with oily soot around the edges, so this isn't really closing properly. So what I do is I get my lint-free rags that I keep around my shop, and I use carb cleaner and just soak this up with carb cleaner. You can see how clean this is right now, but this was just black, oily, and really dirty down inside there. And then I take and wipe it around down in through here. Now when I did this when I was at home, it just came out black. So after doing that, I started the engine, going to hold the throttle a little bit, keep it running at a fast idle, and I took the entire can of carburetor cleaner and I sprayed it into the intake. Now you have to keep the engine running at a fast idle, and you have to back off. You can flood the engine, but in this case, I just for 15 minutes kept spraying a little bit, let it race up a little bit, spray a little bit, around 2,000 RPMs enough. But what this carb cleaner did is it went down and cleaned out that intake plenum, probably cleaned some of the soot off the valves as well. But at that point, you can't believe how well this engine started to run. I had to adjust the idle because it wasn't idling fast enough. But if you recall in the previous video when I was working on it at home, I got this thing running very well just with the things that I've shown you in this video. Now, I got to admit I'm not done here yet. You know, even though it made it out to the farm and ran quite well, the next morning I went to start it, and that's always a good test. Good cold start test after it sat overnight. And you could tell it's still not starting very well. It stumbles, takes a while to warm up. So I've got some more work here to do on the fuel injection system. I'm going to put a pressure gauge on it, check my fuel pressure. Maybe I've got a problem with the pump or the filter or the regulator. And then I may even pull a couple of these fuel injectors out and test the spray patterns. So as we continue on here, I'll come back and report in until we get this baby running like brand new.